Apache girl whispered, "If I please you tonight, will you keep me forever?" The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and gold. The air carried the crisp smell of the desert, mingling with the faint scent of wildflowers that grew in small patches along the dusty roads. In this small town, nestled close to the Apache reservation, life moved slowly. Children ran barefoot through the streets, their laughter echoing off the adobe walls. Families gathered outside their homes, sharing the day's news, while the elderly sat quietly, offering gentle smiles to those who passed. Among them lived Lena, a girl of 17, with deep brown eyes that seemed to hold more stories than anyone could imagine. Lena was quiet, but her presence could not be ignored. There was a strength in her, a quiet determination that had grown from the challenges she faced every day. Her family was not wealthy. Money was tight, and every day brought small struggles that required patience and courage. Her mother worked long hours cleaning houses, and her father traveled far and wide to find odd jobs that could help put food on the table. Lena had grown up learning how to help in small ways, whether it was cooking a meal for her younger siblings, fetching water, or tending the little garden her family maintained. She knew the value of hard work, and she carried herself with dignity and quiet pride, even in the face of hardship. Despite the challenges, Lena found beauty in simple things. She loved walking along the edges of the reservation at sunset, where the mountains rose like silent guardians over the land. She loved listening to the whispers of the wind as it moved through the tall grasses, carrying with it stories of her ancestors. Sometimes she would sit by the river that ran nearby, dipping her fingers into the cool water and imagining faraway places she had never seen. These moments of solitude were her escape, her way of dreaming beyond the limitations of her small town. One evening, the town's small community center announced a fair. It was a rare event, bringing excitement and curiosity to everyone, young and old. There were stalls selling handmade crafts, colorful ribbons fluttering in the breeze, the smell of fresh corn and roasted peanuts filling the air. Music played softly from a small stage, and children ran around playing games. Lena, curious but cautious, decided to attend. She slipped into her simple dress, tying her long, dark hair into a neat braid. Her heart raced with anticipation as she made her way to the fair, unsure of what she might see or who she might meet. Among the visitors that evening was Ethan. He had come from the city to volunteer in community projects, hoping to make a difference and learn from people whose lives were very different from his own. Ethan was tall, with kind eyes that reflected genuine interest and empathy. He had a quiet manner but an approachable presence, and he had quickly earned the trust of those he worked with. That evening, drawn by the laughter and energy of the fair, he wandered among the stalls, admiring the crafts and observing the lively interactions around him. It was at the edge of the fair, near a small stand of handmade jewelry, that Lena and Ethan's paths crossed for the first time. Lena had paused, inspecting a delicate necklace of turquoise and silver, her fingers brushing against the cool beads. Ethan, noticing her interest, offered a gentle comment about the craftsmanship. Lena looked up, startled for a moment, and then returned a polite smile. There was an awkwardness at first, the cautious approach of two strangers from different worlds. But in that brief moment, something shifted. Ethan's words were sincere, free of judgment, and Lena felt a rare sense of ease. Over the next hour, they found themselves walking along the paths of the fair together. They talked about the simplest things at first, the beauty of the desert, the taste of roasted corn, the songs playing softly in the background. Ethan asked questions with genuine curiosity, not to interrogate but to understand. Lena answered carefully, aware that she was sharing pieces of herself that she rarely revealed to anyone outside her community. The conversation flowed more easily than either of them expected, and soon, laughter and smiles replaced the initial hesitation. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the fairgrounds, they found a quiet spot near the river. Lena's eyes reflected the fading light, and Ethan felt a pull he could not quite explain. There was a vulnerability in her, yes, but also a quiet strength that seemed to shine even in moments of uncertainty. She spoke of her dreams in small, cautious whispers, revealing hopes that she had kept hidden for fear of disappointment. She wanted to travel to see the world beyond the mountains, but she also wanted to honor her family and her heritage. She wanted love, yes, but it had to be real, something lasting and true. It was then, in a moment of quiet honesty, that she whispered words that would stay with Ethan forever. "If I please you tonight, will you keep me forever?" The words were not merely a plea for romance, but a fragile offering of trust. She was asking not for fleeting attention, but for commitment, for someone who could see her heart and accept it fully. Ethan felt a surge of responsibility, a mix of admiration and protectiveness. He understood in that instant the depth of what she had said and the courage it had taken to say it. They sat by the river for a long while, talking and listening to the soft rush of water over stones. Ethan shared stories of his life in the city, the noise, the crowded streets, the endless rush, and Lena listened with fascination. She asked questions, curious about a world so different from her own, yet never losing sight of who she was or where she came from. They discovered common values in unexpected places. A love for family, a desire to help others, and a respect for traditions, even if the traditions themselves were different. As darkness fell, the fair slowly emptied. Lanterns flickered in the gentle breeze, and the music faded into a soft hum. Lena and Ethan walked back toward the town together, their steps careful, as if testing the fragile trust that had formed between them. Neither spoke of the whispered words again that night, but both carried them silently, a quiet thread connecting their hearts. The world around them seemed larger and smaller all at once, larger because of the unknown possibilities, smaller because they had found each other in the midst of it. Back at her home, Lena felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear. She had allowed herself to trust, even for a moment, and it had felt both wonderful and terrifying. Her parents noticed the spark in her eyes, the new sense of hope that seemed to radiate from her, but they said nothing, respecting her privacy while silently worrying. Lena knew that life would not suddenly become easy. There were still challenges, still obstacles, still the careful navigation of a world that did not always understand her. But for the first time, she felt the stirring of something she had rarely experienced. The sense that she could belong, not just to her family or her community, but to someone who truly understood her heart. Ethan, too, returned to his small rental house in town, thinking of Lena and the quiet strength she had shown. He knew their worlds were different, and he understood the challenges that lay ahead. But he also felt a spark of determination, a desire to be worthy of the trust she had offered, even in the form of a single whispered question. He realized that true connection required patience, respect, and courage. It was not about grand gestures or dramatic promises. It was about showing up, understanding, and valuing someone for who they truly were. The next days brought small moments that deepened their bond. They exchanged notes and letters, met in quiet corners of the reservation, and shared stories that revealed their fears and hopes. Each encounter built trust, each shared smile built connection, and each thoughtful gesture brought them closer. Yet the whispered words lingered, a reminder that love in its truest form is always fragile, always requiring care. Lena began to see herself in a new light. She realized that asking for love was not a weakness, but a brave acknowledgement of her own desires and worth. She understood that she had the right to hope, to dream, and to be seen. And Ethan began to understand that love was not just about admiration or infatuation, but about responsibility, respect, and the quiet acts of kindness that build a life together. As the first part of their story came to a close, the sun rose and set over the small town as it always had, indifferent to human worries yet witness to the small miracles that unfolded within its bounds. Lena and Ethan had met, connected, and begun a journey that neither fully understood, yet both felt compelled to follow. Their worlds were different, their challenges many, but for the first time both felt the fragile thrill of hope. A hope that whispered even in the desert wind that perhaps love could last, and perhaps forever was not just a word spoken in fear but a promise waiting to be fulfilled. Life after that evening at the fair began to feel different for Lena. She carried a quiet excitement in her heart, a gentle hope that had not been there before, but alongside it came worry. Her parents, while loving and caring, were protective in ways that sometimes felt heavy. They wanted to keep her safe in a world they knew was full of difficulties. They had seen too many young people fall into mistakes, and though they never spoke harshly, their eyes carried concern whenever Lena mentioned Ethan. Lena understood this, and she respected their feelings, but the longing to be close to someone who truly understood her was strong. Ethan's presence in her life was both comforting and confusing. He was gentle and kind, always careful not to pressure her, yet his curiosity about her world sometimes made her feel exposed. There was a part of her that wanted to retreat back into the safety of her family and routines, but another part wanted to take the risk, to explore the connection they had begun. It was a delicate balance between trust and caution, and Lena found herself thinking about him more often than she realized. The town itself was quiet, but whispers traveled fast. People noticed Lena and Ethan together, and some eyes were curious, others judgmental. The small community was tightly knit, and any unusual pairing could quickly become the subject of gossip. Lena felt it in the way people sometimes stared when she walked past, and in the subtle questions from acquaintances. It was not always easy to ignore. She had grown up learning to face challenges, but this was different. This was about judgment that came not from harm, but from misunderstanding. Ethan, too, noticed the tension. He was careful about how he acted, knowing that he was an outsider in a world that had its own rules and boundaries. He wanted to support Lena, but he also understood the limitations he faced. It was not enough to be kind. He had to be respectful, patient, and observant. Sometimes he worried that his presence alone could bring trouble to Lena, and the thought weighed heavily on him. He often stayed up late, thinking of ways to show he could be trusted, ways to show that his feelings were genuine and steady. School became another area where Lena felt the pressure of her growing relationship. Some classmates noticed the closeness she shared with Ethan and whispered behind her back. It was subtle at first, small comments and sidelong glances, but over time it became harder to ignore. Lena tried to focus on her studies, on helping her family, and on her own personal goals, but the tension followed her like a shadow. She sometimes wondered if it was worth it, if pursuing this connection would bring more pain than happiness. One afternoon, Ethan suggested a quiet picnic near the edge of the reservation. It was a place where the river curved gently, shaded by cottonwood trees, and where the wind carried the soft rustle of leaves over the water. They sat together, sharing a simple meal of bread, cheese, and fruit. It was ordinary in its simplicity, yet extraordinary in the way it allowed them to be themselves. Ethan listened as Lena spoke about her family, her responsibilities, and her dreams. He asked questions not to pry, but to understand, and Lena found herself opening up in ways she had never done before. "I sometimes feel like the world is too big for me," Lena confessed quietly, watching the sunlight dance on the river. "Like no matter how hard I try, there's always something I can't reach. But when I'm with you, it feels smaller, calmer, like maybe I can manage it all." Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. "You're stronger than you think," he said softly. "You've already faced so much and handled it with courage. I don't want to fix everything for you. I just want to be here to walk beside you whatever comes." Those words stayed with Lena. She had always wanted to be seen for who she truly was, beyond appearances, beyond whispers and judgments. Ethan's willingness to understand her, to respect her boundaries, and to acknowledge her strength without trying to change her, made her heart feel lighter. Yet even in that lightness, the world outside continued to test her. One evening, Lena returned home to find her mother speaking in a low voice with her aunt. She overheard fragments of the conversation, mentions of Ethan, outsider, not ready. Lena felt a mixture of fear and frustration. She wanted to explain, to tell them that Ethan was trustworthy and kind, but she also understood their concern. Their worry came from love, from a desire to protect her. It was a reminder that even when something feels right, it doesn't mean the path is easy. The next few weeks brought both small joys and subtle tensions. Lena and Ethan continued meeting, each encounter carefully chosen to respect her family's boundaries and the unspoken rules of the community. They shared laughter over small mistakes, exchanged stories of childhood memories, and supported each other in quiet ways that did not demand attention from the outside world. Lena taught Ethan about her heritage, the importance of the land, the stories of her ancestors, and the traditions that guided her family. Ethan listened, fascinated, and sometimes struggled to fully grasp it, but he never dismissed it. Despite these tender moments, challenges mounted. Financial pressures on Lena's family increased, forcing her to take on more responsibilities. There were evenings when she came home exhausted, her hands raw from work and her heart heavy from worry. At those times, she wondered if she could balance everything: family, school, personal dreams, and her growing feelings for Ethan. Yet she could not deny the joy that his presence brought. Ethan, meanwhile, faced his own struggles. He had returned to the city for a short period due to volunteer commitments, and the separation was harder than he had anticipated. He missed Lena's quiet laughter, the gentle way she observed the world, and the moments of connection that seemed to transcend words. He realized that his feelings were deeper than he had expected, and that his desire to be there for her was not fleeting. He wrote letters, careful and thoughtful, each one a bridge across the distance, expressing his respect, admiration, and quiet longing. Back in the small town, Lena read each letter with care, savoring the words but also feeling the weight of responsibility. She knew that love required more than feelings. It required understanding, patience, and courage. She began to see that her whispered question at the fair, "If I please you tonight, will you keep me forever?" was not just a question of romantic desire, but a reflection of her longing for security, trust, and a promise of presence. Ethan's responses, his careful and consistent attention, reassured her that perhaps such a promise could exist, even in small, steady ways. But the world had other tests in store. One afternoon, Lena was confronted by a group of classmates who questioned her closeness with Ethan. Their words were sharp, laced with judgment and curiosity. Lena felt her cheeks burn, a mixture of anger and embarrassment rising within her. She wanted to retreat, to hide, but she remembered the quiet strength she had carried all her life. With calm determination, she spoke firmly, explaining that her choices were her own, and that Ethan had always treated her with respect. Though the confrontation did not fully end the gossip, it marked a turning point. Lena realized that standing up for herself was part of growing, and that courage was not only found in grand gestures, but also in everyday decisions. Ethan returned shortly after this confrontation, sensing that something had changed. He listened as Lena recounted the encounter, offering quiet support rather than immediate solutions. "I'm proud of you," he said simply. "Not because you're with me, but because of who you are. You stood strong even when it was hard. That's what matters." Lena felt warmth in his words, a validation that went beyond the surface of affection. It was an acknowledgement of her inner strength, and it deepened the trust between them. As the weeks turned into months, their bond grew, tempered by challenges and strengthened by understanding. They learned to navigate the complexities of their world, family expectations, societal judgments, and personal fears, without losing sight of the connection that had first drawn them together. Lena began to understand that love was not a simple promise of forever, but a series of choices, each small and deliberate, each requiring care, attention, and honesty. Ethan understood that supporting Lena meant respecting her boundaries, valuing her heritage, and walking beside her without trying to control or change her. Amidst all these challenges, moments of joy remained. They discovered quiet places to meet, where the noise of the world faded and they could simply exist together. They shared laughter over small, ordinary events: a fallen basket of fruit, a bird landing nearby, the wind carrying a melody through the trees. These moments, simple yet profound, became the foundation of their growing connection. Yet always, the whispered words from that first evening lingered in Lena's mind. "If I please you tonight, will you keep me forever?" The question had not lost its weight. It had only deepened in meaning. It was not about a single night or fleeting affection, but about the possibility of being truly seen, valued, and respected. Each day, as they navigated the complexities of their lives, that question remained a quiet reminder of the trust and vulnerability that underpinned their relationship. By the end of this period, both Lena and Ethan had grown in ways they had not anticipated. Lena discovered resilience and courage she had not fully acknowledged before. Ethan discovered patience and understanding, learning that love was as much about listening and respecting as it was about affection. Together, they had begun to build a connection that was real, grounded, and hopeful, a connection that could endure the tests of life, as long as they continued to honor the trust they had given one another. The calm rhythm of life that Lena and Ethan had grown accustomed to was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected crisis. It began with news from the reservation. A severe storm was approaching, stronger than anyone had anticipated. The local authorities warned of possible flooding near the river and heavy winds that could damage homes and infrastructure. Lena's family was anxious, knowing that their modest home sat near the edge of the riverbank. They prepared as best they could, securing belongings, moving fragile items to higher ground, and making sure that everyone was safe. Lena felt a knot of worry tighten in her stomach. She knew this storm would test her family's resilience and perhaps her own courage. Ethan, who had been working nearby, immediately rushed to Lena's home when he heard the news. His first thought was not of his own safety, but of her and her family. Lena opened the door, relief and fear mingling in her eyes. "I'm glad you're here," she said quietly. "It's going to be a long night." Ethan nodded, helping them with preparations. Together, they moved boxes to safer places, secured windows, and checked on neighbors who might need assistance. Every small action carried weight. There was no drama, no exaggerated heroism, just the steady work of two people determined to protect those they cared about. As the storm began, the wind whipped through the trees with a loud, unsettling roar. Rain fell in sheets, flooding the small streets, and the river swelled dangerously close to the banks. Lena and Ethan stayed close to her family, offering support wherever it was needed. Her younger siblings huddled together, frightened by the sound of the wind and thunder. Lena held them close, trying to hide her own fear. She had learned to be strong for others, but this storm tested her patience, courage, and resolve in ways she had never imagined. Through the long night, Ethan proved his dedication not with grand gestures, but with quiet, consistent support. He helped Lena's father reinforce a weak part of the riverbank, stayed near her mother as she calmed her children, and offered words of reassurance whenever Lena felt overwhelmed. Lena watched him carefully, realizing that his actions reflected the depth of his feelings more than any words could. He was not here for recognition, he was here because he chose to be. That simple choice carried more weight than any promise. Hours passed slowly. The storm raged on, leaving a trail of anxiety in its wake. At one point, a sudden flash flood threatened the low-lying areas near the river. Lena's heart pounded as she saw the water rise, sweeping away debris and carrying the force of nature toward homes. Without hesitation, she sprang into action, helping her neighbors move valuables to safety and guiding children to higher ground. Ethan followed her lead, ready to assist, but always allowing her to take the lead when necessary. His presence was steady, unwavering, and it gave Lena the courage to act decisively. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape that had been both battered and transformed. Trees were uprooted, small buildings damaged, and streets covered in mud and debris. Yet the people of the town emerged from their homes, weary but alive. Lena's family's home had been spared the worst, thanks to their careful preparations and teamwork. Lena felt a wave of relief wash over her, but it was mixed with exhaustion. The night had been long and testing, and the emotional weight of what they had endured lingered heavily. In the days that followed, the community worked together to repair the damage. Lena and Ethan continued to support one another and their neighbors. They cleaned debris from streets, helped rebuild fences, and offered assistance wherever it was needed. It was during this period that their bond deepened further. They saw each other in moments of stress and fatigue, moments that revealed true character. Lena witnessed Ethan's patience and determination, his willingness to act without seeking attention or praise. Ethan saw Lena's resilience, her courage under pressure, and her ability to remain calm even when fear threatened to overwhelm her. Amidst the hard work, personal tensions began to surface. Lena's parents, while grateful for Ethan's help, expressed their concerns more openly now. They were worried about the impact the relationship might have on Lena, especially in a time when safety and survival were paramount. They questioned whether Ethan truly understood the challenges Lena faced daily, whether he could endure the realities of her life, and whether their connection was more than a fleeting comfort. Lena felt torn. She wanted to defend Ethan, to show that he was trustworthy, but she also respected her parents' concerns. Their worries were not unfounded. They had lived through hardships and understood the world better than anyone else. Ethan, sensing the growing tension, knew he had to act with care. He spent time talking with Lena's parents, not trying to impress them, but to show them that he understood the responsibility he was taking on. He spoke humbly, explaining that he could not promise a perfect life, but that he could offer respect, patience, and unwavering support. It was not easy for him, as he had never had to prove himself in this way before. but he understood that true commitment meant showing through actions and words that he could be trusted. Meanwhile, Lena faced her own inner conflict. She loved Ethan, admired his kindness, and felt safe with him in ways she had never experienced before. Yet she also understood the weight of her own responsibilities, to her family, to her community, and to herself. She began to realize that love was not just about shared moments of joy, but about navigating difficulties together, making sacrifices, and standing strong even when life tested them both. Her whispered words from the fair, "If I please you tonight, will you keep me forever?" took on a deeper meaning. They were no longer just about affection, they were about trust, loyalty, and shared courage in the face of challenges. One afternoon, a misunderstanding threatened to create a rift between them. A neighbor had seen Lena and Ethan working closely together and assumed the worst. Rumors began to circulate, hinting that their relationship was causing distraction from important responsibilities. Lena overheard the whispers and felt her heart tighten. She confronted Ethan privately, expressing her fear that the gossip could harm not just them, but her family's reputation as well. Ethan listened carefully, never growing defensive, and assured her that he understood. Together, they devised a plan to address the situation calmly, showing that they could act with integrity even under scrutiny. Their ability to navigate these difficulties strengthened their connection. They learned that communication was essential, not only between themselves, but also with those around them. Ethan understood that Lena's family's approval was important to her, and he respected the traditions and boundaries that guided her life. Lena realized that love was not about escaping responsibility or ignoring reality, but about facing it together, with honesty, patience, and courage. As the weeks progressed, Lena and Ethan faced yet another challenge: school responsibilities. Personal ambitions and community expectations collided in ways that tested their commitment. Lena's grades were important, and her family relied on her success as a pathway to a better future. Ethan's volunteer work demanded time and attention, and he often had to travel for short periods. Balancing these responsibilities with their growing feelings for each other required maturity, planning, and a willingness to compromise. Despite the pressures, Lena and Ethan found moments of quiet joy. They shared small victories, celebrated the successful completion of difficult tasks, and supported each other through setbacks. Lena taught Ethan how to make traditional dishes, how to navigate cultural ceremonies, and how to listen to the land and its rhythms. Ethan shared stories from his city life, teaching Lena new ways to approach challenges, and showing her that different perspectives could be valuable. In these moments, they discovered that love was not just a feeling, but a practice, something cultivated through shared experience, respect, and care. Yet even in these tender moments, the stakes remained high. Lena's whispered question lingered in the back of both their minds. Could they truly promise a forever in a world full of unpredictability? Could they navigate the complexities of life, culture, and family expectations while staying true to their feelings? These questions did not have easy answers, and the uncertainty added a tension that both excited and frightened them. A turning point came when Lena faced a personal challenge unrelated to Ethan. A close family member fell ill, requiring her attention, patience, and emotional strength. Lena was stretched thin, balancing care for her family, school responsibilities, and her own emotional needs. Ethan, understanding the gravity of the situation, offered support without overstepping. He helped with errands, listened without judgment, and reminded Lena that she was not alone. In this period of strain, their bond was tested more than ever. Lena realized that true love was not only about joyful moments, but about being present and supportive during life's inevitable hardships. Through this intense period, Lena grew in resilience and self-awareness. She discovered the depth of her own courage, the capacity to love without losing herself, and the importance of choosing carefully who she trusted. Ethan, too, matured, learning that love required patience, empathy, and humility. Their whispered words from the fair had evolved into an unspoken understanding, a commitment to stand together, not in perfection, but in honesty, courage, and respect. By the end of this part of the story, both Lena and Ethan had faced trials that revealed their true characters. The storm, the gossip, and the personal challenges had tested them in ways neither could have predicted. Yet through it all, they discovered a deeper connection, one built not on fleeting feelings, but on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the courage to face life together. They realized that love, like life itself, was imperfect, demanding, and sometimes frightening, but also profoundly rewarding when nurtured with care and honesty. The weeks that followed the personal challenges Lena and Ethan had faced were filled with quiet reflection and small victories. Life slowly returned to a rhythm that felt familiar, yet both of them knew that their experiences had changed them forever. Lena found herself moving with more confidence, walking taller not just because of her physical posture, but because of the inner strength she had discovered. She had learned that courage was not simply confronting dangers, but also standing firm in everyday life, facing responsibilities, and making decisions with honesty and care. Ethan, too, had grown. He no longer saw himself as merely a visitor in Lena's world, someone trying to help from the outside. He understood that being part of her life meant immersing himself in her world, learning its rhythms and honoring its traditions. He had gained patience and empathy, realizing that love was more than words or fleeting gestures. It was steady commitment, quiet support, and unwavering presence even when circumstances were difficult. One afternoon, as the sun began to warm the town, Ethan suggested they take a walk along the familiar path near the river. The water sparkled under the sunlight, the gentle rustle of leaves in the cottonwood trees creating a peaceful soundtrack to their steps. Lena felt a sense of calm settle over her. It had been a long journey from the day they met at the fair, filled with excitement, tension, fear, and discovery. Yet now, in this quiet moment, she felt a deep gratitude for the growth, challenges, and shared experiences that had brought them to this point. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, observing the small joys of life around them. Children splashed in puddles left by the river, birds sang overhead, and the aroma of freshly baked bread drifted from nearby homes. These ordinary details, so often overlooked, carried a new weight for Lena and Ethan. They had come to understand that beauty existed not only in extraordinary events, but in the simple, everyday moments of life, moments shared with people who truly understood and cared for one another. Eventually, they found a quiet spot beneath a large cottonwood tree. Ethan turned to Lena, taking her hands gently in his. "We've been through so much together," he said softly. "The storm, the gossip, the challenges, everything tested us, and yet here we are, stronger, wiser, and closer than ever." Lena looked into his eyes, her own filled with emotion. "I've learned so much too," she replied. "I've learned that love isn't just about feelings or words, it's about choices, patience, and trust. It's about standing together even when life is hard." She paused, her voice barely above a whisper, yet carrying the weight of her sincerity. "I whispered once, asking if you would keep me forever. I see now that forever isn't a single promise. It's every day we choose to be there for each other, every action that shows care, every moment of understanding. That is what forever truly means." Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading across his face. "I understand now," he said. "And I choose every day to be with you, to walk beside you, to learn from you, and to support you in every way I can. Not because I have to, but because I want to." The moment was quiet yet profound, a culmination of all that they had experienced. The whispered words from the fair no longer carried fear or uncertainty, but a deep trust and understanding. It was not a naive or idealized love, but one forged through challenges, patience, and genuine care. Lena felt a sense of peace she had never known before. She realized that the bond they shared was strong enough to endure the tests life would inevitably bring. In the following months, Lena and Ethan continued to grow both as individuals and as a pair. Lena focused on her studies, her family responsibilities, and her personal ambitions, while Ethan balanced his volunteer work and his commitment to supporting her. Their relationship was not free of challenges. There were still moments of worry, disagreement, and fatigue. But they faced each difficulty together, understanding that love required effort, compromise, and continual attention. They also shared joy in small ways. Lena introduced Ethan to more of her culture, teaching him the traditional songs, stories, and customs of the Apache people. Ethan, in turn, shared his own experiences, bringing new ideas and perspectives to her world without diminishing her traditions. Together, they discovered that differences could be bridges rather than barriers, enriching their connection and teaching them valuable lessons about respect, communication, and understanding. One significant moment came when Lena's younger brother prepared for a school presentation. Nervous and unsure, he confided in Lena, and she, in turn, guided him gently. Ethan observed quietly, offering encouragement without taking control. Lena realized in that moment how much she had grown. She could care for her family, support her loved ones, and nurture relationships while maintaining her own identity and independence. It was a lesson that extended to her relationship with Ethan. Love was about mutual support, not dependence or control. As the seasons changed, bringing crisp air and golden leaves in the fall, Lena and Ethan faced new challenges together. Community events, family responsibilities, and personal goals created a complex web of demands on their time and energy. Yet, they continued to meet each other with honesty and patience. They discovered that the small, steady gestures, a shared meal, a comforting word, or simply being present, were more powerful than grand displays of affection. These moments strengthened their bond and created a foundation of trust and understanding that neither could take lightly. Ethan began to participate more actively in Lena's community, not as an outsider, but as someone who had earned the respect and trust of the people around him. He helped organize events, assisted with community projects, and learned the customs and values that shaped Lena's life. Lena observed his efforts and felt her admiration deepen. His willingness to immerse himself in her world, to learn and adapt without losing his own identity, reflected the depth of his commitment. Meanwhile, Lena's family gradually warmed to Ethan. They saw that his intentions were sincere, his support steady, and his respect for their traditions genuine. Slowly, walls of suspicion and concern softened, replaced by cautious trust and acceptance. Lena felt relief and gratitude, understanding that love was not only a bond between two people, but also a connection that required acceptance from those who mattered most in their lives. In quiet moments, Lena and Ethan reflected on how far they had come. They remembered the fair, the whispered question, the storm, the challenges, and the growth that had followed. They understood that their journey was not about perfection, but about authenticity, about being present, patient, and honest with each other. The hardships had not weakened their bond. They had strengthened it, teaching them resilience, empathy, and the true meaning of commitment. As the story approached its natural conclusion, Lena and Ethan shared a final, meaningful moment beneath the same cottonwood tree where they had once reflected on their journey. The river flowed gently beside them, carrying with it the quiet sounds of life, birds, wind, and the distant laughter of children. Lena turned to Ethan, her eyes reflecting gratitude, trust, and a deep love that had grown from shared experience. "Forever is not just a word," she said softly. "It's every day we choose to be here for each other, every moment we understand and respect one another. That is what I hoped for when I whispered my question that night, and I see now that you have given me exactly that." Ethan smiled, taking her hand and holding it gently. "And I choose every day to be with you, not because it's easy, not because it's perfect, but because you are worth every effort, every moment, every challenge." In that quiet, golden moment, Lena felt a sense of completeness. The girl who once whispered her fragile plea for love and trust had grown into a young woman who understood the strength of her own heart and the depth of connection she could share with another person. Ethan, who had entered her life as a curious outsider, had become a steadfast companion, someone who respected, nurtured, and walked beside her through every challenge. Their journey was not a fairy tale, nor was it free from difficulties. But it was real, authentic, and grounded in mutual respect, trust, and shared courage. Lena and Ethan had discovered that love was not simply about passion or romance, but about patience, understanding, and the daily commitment to be present for one another. Their whispered question from the fair had evolved into a living truth. Forever was not a promise spoken lightly, but a choice made again and again, in every shared moment, in every act of care, in every step taken together. And so, life continued, steady and bright. Lena and Ethan moved forward, not with certainty of a flawless future, but with confidence in their bond and in the strength they had cultivated together. They faced each day with hope, courage, and the understanding that true love is built not on ease, but on the willingness to grow, support, and choose each other continually, no matter what life brings. In the end, the story of Lena and Ethan was not about perfection, grand gestures, or dramatic declarations. It was about the quiet, powerful moments that shape real lives, The trust built in shared struggles, the courage discovered in hardship, the joy found in simple acts of care, and the commitment to honor one another with honesty and respect. It was a story of love grounded in reality, strengthened by challenges, and enriched by mutual understanding. A love that, in its own way, could truly last forever.